Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for watching and listening to a new episode of Are We There Yet? This is episode 13, Love Languages. I'm your host, Susan Ruth.
I'm your host, Mara Adelman, and we are two humans who are having the real conversations and raising the questions that we all have about where the there is when it comes to dating, relationships, and sex.
Yahoo!
Where's your there been? What's new and exciting?
New and exciting. Let's see. I've gotten a trip out of the way. I went to Nashville and Alabama and did work on a documentary that I'm working on. So that's exciting.
Cool.
And yeah, that's going to be a process over several trips. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Worked with really good people. Yeah, that's where I'm at. What about you?
Super fun. Things have mellowed out a bit. Just, living, working, dating. Working, dating. I had another whole aha moment because, I have certain ways that I date. We talked about it on the safety and dating one where I only have a video first before I give out my phone number because I'm just sick of all the kind of nonsense that goes along with
I get it.
Communicating with strangers.
Nonsense.
It's nonsense. But I met this guy in person and then we had a fun date and it was so fascinating. We had a good date and then he was reaching for a second date. Let's go do sushi. I know you don't eat meat. That sounds great. And then hadn't asked. And then we had like an hour and a half conversation and we had pretty good chemistry. I wasn't feeling like 100% on, but I was like, this is it. Let's see what happens. And then as we're talking, he starts kind of talking about how he doesn't like animal hair and I've got dogs.
Oh.
I could feel him like backing his way out of all of it.
Like I have all these pet rats.
Yeah, I have rats in my house too. You want to come play with my rats? I did have a pet rat when I was younger, which is why the rats are extremely disturbing killing them because I had a pet rat, Rich.
Yeah.
Little.
My brother had pet rat. Yeah.
They're super cute when
they are so cute and soft and cuddly. But anyway, we digress.
So essentially he backed his way out of it. And it was really confusing. I didn't try and talk him back into it. Okay. And in my head, I'm like, deal breaker. I've got animals. I love my animals. I'm also a very clean person who has a robot vacuum cleaner. Like, I don't like hair. Nobody likes hair, whatever. So he never reached back out. And I found it super fascinating. And then I heard a podcast about how this is a very common practice where people will find a reason to not be in, even though they're kind of feeling in, because they're either avoidant, not ready, you've done something that's turned them off. And then it was like, oh, that's why he did that. He talked himself out of it.
Yeah.
I just think it's so silly that as adults, when I'm not in, I say I'm not in. I'm not feeling the kind of chemistry that I would need to move forward with this, but thank you so much. Or
yeah.
I think I feel the chemistry, but there's these areas that I just feel like we're not going to be compatible.
I think that speaks to one of our first episodes is that some people are so afraid to hurt someone else's feelings or that how they'll be judged. It really comes down to ego. I think a lot of times we don't want to say something to someone because we don't want them to view us poorly. Yes. So that's really about us. It has nothing to do with the other person.
Yeah,
it's an egocentric way of living your life. Yeah. I'm a big fan of put it out there, see what happens. Yeah,
I'm only going to be able to be with somebody long-term as long as they're like, radical honesty, say it like it is. That stuff is, but whatever. I had a fun date. It was fun. Good. And he met a couple of my love languages. So today we're going to talk love languages. Gary Chapman wrote a book. He was a counselor and he had all these couples in his counseling office. And he thought, I'm going to write a book so I can help the masses. For 5 or so years, it did nothing. And then it started taking off. And now I think it has like 13 million copies and has been translated into 15 different languages.
A lot of relationship therapists handed out. I know that when I had a partner and we went to relationship therapy, that book was recommended as a read.
I would say other than attachment styles, which is my other favorite concept, if you understand your attachment styles and your love languages and work on them with your partner or anybody you're dating, you're going to be more successful.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially it's how you express love and how you want to receive love. And generally they're the same thing because the way that you want it, you end up showing it, hoping that you get it back that way.
But you hope that mirroring works. It doesn't work though.
Mirroring is the word.
I would say one of the top reasons why couples don't work out is because they don't understand their love languages. They don't understand what activities or what things make them feel loved, and they don't understand why the things they do that they consider loving, their partners are not receiving as a loving gesture. There's a lot of disconnect in there. Yeah.
the biggest reason for disconnect. And so the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, and we're going to go into these in more detail: physical touch and affection, acts of service, gifts, and quality time. So a perfect example is a friend couple of mine, his love language is affection. Hers, I can't remember hers specifically, but she said, I'm making a point of walking by and smacking him on the butt and trying to do those things more because I realize that it fills him up and makes him feel happy. And so once you know your partners, many partners are like, how can she not tell I love her? I mopped the floor and I did this and I bought her a gift and I took her to dinner. And she's like, yeah, but my love language is affection. You haven't hugged me. And so if everybody figures it out, look how much time that saves. Oh my God.
And money, potentially.
Yeah, money, time. You mean all I have to do is give you a hug every morning and give you a kiss and we're good? Golden. So I actually dated somebody and we had the same love languages. Mine are quality time and affection. And I laughed later on. I was like, actually, it's sex, affection, quality time.
But isn't sex the same thing as affection or physical touch? I mean,
it falls into a similar category. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's overlay.
There's overlay. Do you know what yours are? There's a quiz link down below, of course. What are your love languages?
I like acts of service, and I like, I know that there are now different levels, and I like intellectual.
We'll talk about those in a little bit because there are. So what happened is he wrote this book in 1990, and of course things have progressed like everything else. So there's other ones, but out of the love language 5, which are your 2 favorites?
I like prizes, and I'm not talking about giant presents or something, but I just the kind of thing where somebody notices that I liked a particular plant or a particular food in the supermarket and then surprise me by bringing me gummy bears. I mean, the simplest things.
Yeah.
And by the way, love languages are experienced between friendships as well. I had a roommate, and for Christmas one year, because I love gummy bears, but I'm celiac, so I can't eat traditional gummy bears. There's a very particular brand that I can eat. And she happened to be in a store and found a 5-pound bag of my favorite kind of gummy bears and got them for me, which it took me forever to eat them all. But what a sweet gesture of understanding that, paying attention to me, not paying attention to me like that, but like, oh, I'm listening to the things that you like and what makes you
thoughtful. They're thoughtful. And then they bring you a gift that's a thoughtful thought. So, but you touched on something that we all love all of these. I love somebody telling me I've done a good job, words of affirmation, somebody touching me, affection, acts of service. Thank you so much for helping me fix that thing. Bringing me a gift, quality time. Everybody likes all of those things, but there are generally one main one and sometimes a secondary one that feeds your soul. Like without those, I cannot date somebody who's not affectionate. I would feel empty all the time.
It's like that game at the amusement park where you have the hammer and you go boom and it goes up the light bulbs. Like all the light bulbs are good, but when it gets the very tip top one that makes you get the giant teddy bear or whatever, that's the thing. And I think that when I'm in a relationship, as it develops, things shift around a little bit more because you get more vulnerable and you get more touchy-feely and that sort of thing. And so then it might shift a little into the other areas. But I know for initial attractions, what it is that pulls me in.
100%. So we'll give some examples for people who can, if your partner has one of these are good ways that you can fill those love languages for them. So if words of affirmation, it's definitely going to be more meaningful if you say something complimentary to them with other people around, because it feeds that kind of, oh, you really mean it, right? So complimenting your partner in front of people. They can be written or spoken, like, hey, you did a great job on that, or wow, that's amazing. It can compliment your appearance, your character, your actions. It can be as simple as I love you. So words of affirmation, and sharing your thoughts with your partner. And so if that's your person's love language, that's a good way to do that. Physical touch and affection is obvious, but sometimes people, if that's not how you show love and your partner wants that, it's harder for you to do that. And so PDA might be hard, for example. But if that's your partner's love language, if you set an alarm before they wake up and give them lots so that you have that 10 minutes in bed together to cuddle and be together physical touch wise, or giving them a nightly back rub, those kinds of things, just kind of trying to incorporate more physical touch into your relationship, feet rubs, all that good stuff. Acts of service, which speaks for you. If somebody were to prep your lunch for the morning, or wow, you needed new socks, so I got rid of your old ones and here's a bunch of new socks. Get the coffee pot ready in the morning so you don't have to do it. Give a couple choices so that person doesn't have to make decisions. That's for me. I love it when people are just like, what would you, here's some options.
Replace my terrible shower head with the shower head I purchased a year and a half ago that I still haven't put in. It's moved already twice since I got it.
Right? You're like, it's something that would be an amazing act of service, especially if it's low water for our drought tolerant, our drought world.
By the way, these would be great for bosses with their employees too. A great way to manage people is to understand how they feel appreciated and loved.
He actually branched out, and there's love languages for friends. He's written 1 million books now. Love languages for work, love languages for your boss, love language for kids, teenagers.
But you don't even have to go that deep dive. Honestly, the basics still work.
Yeah. But you have to understand what your partner wants. So everybody can take the quiz down below to know what yours is and what your partner's is. And then for gifts, you could give your partner a trip home to visit their family for the holidays. That would be cool. Get yourself matching gifts like a cute hat or bracelet. Buy new towels. Get flowers every couple weeks. Leave something cute and small on their pillow. Do these speak to you?
Well, I'll tell you, I was dating a guy and I was just sitting next to him on the couch. We were, who knows, reading or whatnot. And I was leafing through a catalog and there were a pair of polka dot pajamas, giant colorful polka dot pajamas. I thought, wow. And I looked at him, I was like, those are so cute. And I think he saw me looking at them or whatever. And then for Christmas that year, it was a couple months later, there were the pajamas, which was not only did he remember, but he made a mental note and then he went and got it quiet, secretly. And then it was so lovely to know that you're being heard when you don't even know you're being heard. It's a really nice thing. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be a $30 pair of pajamas. I mean, it could truly be anything.
It could truly be anything.
It could be like, oh, my favorite book is blah. And then the other person on the down low maybe reads that, or maybe not even on the down low, reads that book so they can talk to their partner about the book.
All of that. Anything that just brings, and the goal of all of these things is to bring you closer together.
Yeah.
I love it that man paid attention. You made my heart happy. Like, that's a very sweet gesture on his part. Mm-hmm. And then you've got quality time. You could play board games together. I saw this cute couple. I still want to do this someday. They were like playing Scrabble out at a bar.
Love that.
It was so cute. I was like,
that is the way to my heart right there.
It would work for me too. Take my travel, because for me, mine is quality time. So that feels very quality time-ish.
A martini and a game of Scrabble, honey. Let me go. I am there.
Life is good.
I am in. By the way, I suck at Scrabble too. It's not even, but I love playing it. It's so much fun.
It is fun. So that's like, it falls into the whole quality time. You could do things like watch your favorite TV shows together, watch your favorite episodes together, schedule a day a week for dates and make sure that they always happen. So that good quality time, right? All those. And again, all these are good. If you do these all for your partner, great. Figure out what your partner says, do it for them, have them figure it out and do yours. And then people feel closer.
I went to grab breakfast this morning and I went into my regular breakfasty place, and the woman behind the counter, who I've had a few times, lovely, lovely lady. And I ordered my breakfast, which I get the same thing every damn time. And then she remembered, she said, oh, and you'd like a side of balsamic. And I said, yes, I would. And it made me feel so good. It's being seen. It doesn't matter who's seeing you. It's like being seen. It's such a beautiful, lovely thing.
Being seen and known is like so beautiful.
It's lovely.
Yeah. So all of these lead to that if done right. And they came up. So then the funny part is I started hearing about a 6th love language. So I started looking at YouTube videos and I was like, interesting, that the biggest concept is that space is the 6th love language. And I wholeheartily agree with that.
I'm a fan of that one.
I'm a fan of that one. I have my essential 5 elements, and number 5 is self-preservation, which means you have your time to be alone. You have time in your own head. You have time for your own hobbies. And then as you come back as a couple, now you're energized again and have things to talk about. And so space is huge. It was an interesting concept though, that she mentioned that they wanted to debunk the thought process that the person who wants or needs the most space cares less than the other partner.
Good. I'm glad somebody talks about that.
Yeah, because essentially people need different levels of space. I need a fair amount of space, but I also need a lot of connection. And there's ways that that can happen in conjunction with each other. Some people don't need any space and are very happy to be together all of the time. For me, I always find it a little healthier when there's a little more space. And then it goes like this, right? And together, apart, together, apart. So space. And then it was funny. As I was looking that up, there's all these other concepts. Sex is the sixth love language, cleaning the house, feeling known and seen. But again, all of those could fall into one of his other ones. So I think, honestly, the only one that really was like, whoa, that makes good sense is space, sixth love language. So I was trying to look back and remember or dive into my ex's love languages. I can't do it. It's too hard to go backwards and say, oh, he really liked this. I'm going to put some more thought into it. But then I was cracking myself up. All of my ex's love languages were just hobbies. One of those love languages was hunting. One was basketball. One was his family. One was, when I was younger, he was all about his family.
But hunting, that could be an argument that that's a love language that is space of somebody wanting to go off.
That's my point. All of these fell into the space category. And so I don't really know what their love languages were. I'm going to put some more thought into it and see if I can come up with it. But everybody should look back and try to what was mine. Most people's personal love language stays solid over the years. Like, it's not going to change much.
I would agree with that. Mine, at least for myself, I can't speak for other people, but certainly it has stayed the same for me.
Most of the times it stays the same. Your love language is generally an area of your life that you have lack, that you had lack when you were younger, that you have lack in now. And then I put some thought into it and it makes sense. Mine is quality time. And as a child, my family was very busy with my sick brother and other things going on. And I don't feel like we had enough quality time and we didn't have enough affection. And I also feel, because I'm a person who's always on the go, that sometimes I don't give myself enough quality time, which is why when I'm dating somebody, quality time is so important, because as a couple together, you come, you slow down, you have that quality time. So you'll have to reflect on that. Like, it's interesting. These things are also built into us when we're younger.
Quality time is the least for me.
The least? So you must have had a lot.
I enjoy being around people, and especially when I like them and stuff, but I also have so much going on in it that, and maybe that changes a little bit over time, but.
Well, but again, I'm busy too, but for me, it's a high need. So for you, it's just not a need. So it's less about being busy and something that's ingrained in us when we're younger.
But I had absentee parent. I'm not absentee. My dad was working all the time. My mother was being depressed. So,
it's hard to know where all these come from, but people fall into these categories. And Chapman talks about how you have to have your love tank be full, right? And so when somebody's not meeting your love languages, your tank is getting emptier and emptier and emptier. And so he actually talked about in the book, if you and your partner feel like you're kind of not connected, to say, hey, what can I do to fill up your love tank? Or where is your love tank right now? Are you empty, full, or medium, right? And so it's a good concept to keep in mind, because if your love tanks are both full, it's golden.
Yeah. And I think you found some really cool links for people to check out that are down there in the comment section. Definitely do that when you're clicking that subscribe button.
Clicking the subscribe button. So the other fascinating thing is, of course, things evolve over time, right? So Truity.com did a bunch of studies that was a much larger study than the cohort of Chapman's, because he was a counselor. So he had, couples where he came up with this concept. But they did a study of 500,000 people who took a survey on how they feel and share their love. And it was larger and it was more current. Also, Gary Chapman's group was mostly married Christian straight couples. And so it was interesting that they still lined up very well with Chapman's concepts, but they came up with two new ones, which I think fit very well. So the two new ones were intellectual. So having mental discussions, thoughtful advice giving, having respectful debates. And the other new one was emotional. So things around like supporting hard feelings, showing empathy through difficult times. And what's funny is I think we can both relate to these. I'm super need somebody to be like, I'm sorry you had a rough day. So for me, the emotional is really high up there. And I think we've talked before that you're sapiosexual, right?
Yeah, for me, it's intellectual support, having a great conversation, being able to talk about many different topics, things like that.
Right. And so their 7 still very much line up with Chapman's, because the rest of them are, they call it activity, which is essentially quality time. The only thing they kind of added to it was more about not just having quality time together, but sharing hobbies, sharing some leisure, learning a new skill together, going to a cooking class.
I enjoy stuff like that.
I love that stuff. But remember, you don't have to have everything in common, right? 1 or 2 things in common or hobbies together is enough. It doesn't have to be everything together. And so physical, then the next one they called physical, which is essentially affection. So they're still following along with Chapman's ideas, and they call that one still sex plus other intimacy.
I do like kissing. Big fan. I like sex too, but I love a great kisser.
A great makeout session. And
Woo, baby.
100%. And so the other one, which Chapman called acts of service, they call practical, which is still doing chores, but they updated that a bit, because with Chapman's, it was kind of in his book, and I remembered this when I was reading it. It was a little, not to discourage people from reading it, but it was in the 1990s, and again, heterosexual couples, and it was very gendered. So essentially acts of service, the woman who was doing the housework and doing the acts of service. And then when the man was doing it, he was just helping out. So they've kind of updated it as far as like, no, acts of service is everybody doing their share, plus doing an extra act of service that makes your partner happy. So, and then they called words of affirmation appreciation. And it was a little bit more about also cheerleading somebody along. So for instance, words of affirmation in Chapman's concept was, you did a good job today. Susan, you did so good on that documentary you did. This one is also, oh my God, that was, cheerleading you along to get you to that place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And remember, with all of these, we can't expect our needs to get met by one person, people. Like everybody should have other outlets, family, friends, counselors, colleagues at work. Your partner should not have to fill you up all the time or fill all of these love languages for you. It's not possible.
Movies with Ryan Reynolds in them.
Helps fill up what would that be? That would be like the stimulation one.
Acts of service.
Acts of service, honey. Because then when you go take care of yourself later, you're like, oh, thank you, Ryan Reynolds.
Thanks, Ryan.
So I think that's interesting. We put both quizzes down below, the love language, the general love languages, and then the 7 love styles. I think if I had to rank mine, I put it at affection, quality time, and emotional support. Yeah. Where do yours fall, you think?
Great conversation. So that's the intellectual, right? And still acts of service. Because I'm so busy, I think if somebody takes the initiative, I love it. Yeah. And also I feel like I'm always having to be in control of everything. So it's nice to not have to be in control or have to make a decision every once in a while. That's always nice. Yeah. And I think in some way, I think affection to some degree, but again, that might be more further into feeling more intimate with someone or feeling more vulnerable. Maybe not in the beginning. Maybe that's something that develops over time for me. I laugh because I think, God, I sound like a cold fish. I'm not that at all. I'm very loving, very touchy-feely, very huggy, all those things. But in relationship, I like to take my time because I think people send their representatives. We talked about this before, and I like to, see what happens with that. So when the real person shows up, when the representative grows weary and moves along.
Before you're too affectionate, you mean?
Yeah, I don't withhold affection at all. I think I definitely live in the moment, but I think to me, if somebody holds my hand or doesn't hold my hand, doesn't make or break me whatsoever.
Yeah, because it's not a true need. For me, if I like somebody, they better be like all up in here. So again, it's a like or a true love need.
Yeah, but I like to snuggle on the couch and watch TV or a movie with somebody. That's totally fine. I don't know. It's weird. In my brain, I think, God, I sound like Spock, for God's sakes. But
no, you don't. You really don't. You might feel like you sound that way, but you're not. You don't sound like a cold fish at all.
I was raised in a family too, where intellectual achievement was the thing, and you didn't really get compliments on how you looked or or what your clothes were or anything like that. In fact, you were more insulted in my family on those things. So again, my mother's mentally ill. She wasn't necessarily great with the nurturing, loving thing. So when people appreciate and or acknowledge my achievement intellectually, I think that's like, oh really, you noticed that, yay, more than, oh your hair looks nice. I'm like, oh thanks.
Yeah, so that, I don't know, the intellectual really comes in as your top one,
I guess.
The other concept to think about is that now that the more you understand these concepts, you don't have to go find somebody who has the same love languages. I've dated people who have similar ones looking back, and that is helpful. Again, I can't date somebody who thinks that any form of PDA is like off the table, but I don't need, we don't need to be making out in public. So when you're starting to date somebody, it's good to ask, hey, what are your love languages? And if you don't know, give them to them and have them kind of share with you.
PDA doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah,
not even
but it's not a need. So again, things that bother us versus what we actually need to fill our love tanks are different. And to fill the love tanks up. And so my goal is to find somebody where it's a little easy, or they're at least willing to have the emotional intelligence to learn love languages and help agree that we're going to both give each other what we need, right?
Yeah, because I'm intellectually stimulated, I often say, what are your love languages? Even on a first or second date, because I'm genuinely curious as to what they are. And it certainly makes progression easier.
It does, but it's also hilarious. It also tells you when you shouldn't progress. I met this guy at a bar for a quick cocktail, and I asked him somewhere within the date, we're going to talk about that on a first date. And I was like, okay, not my guy. And he was condescending about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, if you don't want to talk about anything emotional, then you're just not my guy, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take somebody with some pretty strong ego, word for it. Ego, power. Anyway, somebody with a strong ego to date us while we're over here talking. I mean, everything being out in the open and talking.
Also, there's nothing wrong with discussing emotions. I think we've been sold this bill that says, oh, if you talk about emotions, that's just too needy or too this or that. It's like, it's part of everything. Physical and emotional needs are equal on the scale of living your life.
Yes.
There's nothing shameful or over the top or anything like that by saying, how are your needs met?
Yeah, exactly. How can I help meet your needs? And so, ego strength. That was the word I was looking for. Ego strength, because because if we start dating somebody, they're going to have some of their dirty laundry aired, the stuff that they approve. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I'm going to keep asking people on first dates, what's your love language? Because again, it helps weed out people that aren't interested in understanding their emotions at all.
Mm-hmm. Or second date too. That's okay too.
Oh yeah. Well, my first one's a video. I ask on my first real date in person.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. I'm truly curious. I want to understand people better and also know if we kind of match up, which is fun when it matches up. It's hard to match up. I was listening to this podcast that was talking about how each time your next connection should be stronger than your last connection. If you want
I think that's because as you grow to learn yourself, you are more ready to be a partner to someone else, if that's on your agenda, for sure. And I don't see anything wrong with having different love languages, as long as, again, you are acknowledging and conscious and considerate of those languages.
Yeah. So we've covered love languages. Everybody should talk or go take the quizzes down below and figure out what yours is. Have your partner take it. See if you guys can come a little closer with your love languages.
Come a little closer. Yes, and please subscribe to the show. Share it with your friends, your colleagues, the people you like, the people you don't like. Share it. Let people know we are out here existing, trying to help ourselves and the world understand this crazy thing called love and relationship and sex and all the stuff in between.
All the stuff in between the sheets and not. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking communication and conflict styles, which will be interesting.
Ooh, okay.
I want to make sure that we communicate well so that you can get busy.
I think it's important in communication styles, know how to fight fair and logically and not cruelly. Learn how to stand up for yourself and say, that's not okay. And this is making me mad. And that anger isn't a bad thing if it's handled weirdly, ironically, I suppose, calmly and precisely, so that you're not bringing up something from 30 years ago. You did this and all that, but we'll get into all that.
We're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about the Gottman's 4 horsemen and how not to communicate poorly. And how to take pauses and how to come back. And again, for me, I have to be with somebody who's willing to communicate, willing to come back, willing to always fix it. And these are hard. It's hard to find. It's hard. But I'm not giving up. It's going to be like a needle in a haystack, but we will find the right mix.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for watching and listening, everyone. Please share, please subscribe, check out the links, do all the things, be happy, be well, stay connected. Yes.
Yes. Love you. Be safe.
I love you. I love you. And yeah, bye everybody.
Bye everybody.